Hello YouTube, this is Phil here from Dad Stuff, and today I want to talk to you about how to buy a blind off of the shelves in a store and how we can adjust that blind to create a well-fitting internal blind without having to go to the extra expense of having to employ a company to make bespoke blinds. Now I like it when I put my blinds inside the window reveal like this. I have it so that the blinds will nice and easily close. They're not rubbing on the walls. They'll block out the light. The alternative to this, if you're not such a competent DIYer, is that you'll put your blind on the outside of the window reveal with the overhang around the window. Okay, that is okay if that's what you want, but I much prefer it when the blind is inside the window. So let's have a look at the project space where I'm going to be doing this. So in this bathroom, where I've got the window has been painted and prepared, and I've put my tape measure across the bottom here. So it's tucked into that corner, it's tucked into that corner, and I can see that my window dimension on the interior is 116.5 centimeters. So make a note of that. So 116.5 centimeters or 1165 millimeters. So here comes the problem. The blind that I've bought, this one is from a UK company called Dunelm, and it's a standard 120 meter width blind. That blind is not going to fit that hole. I'm going to have to go into the process of cutting that to make it fit. So I want to show you how we go about doing that. So job number one, open up the packet. So I've emptied the contents of the box out onto the floor. It's the only big clear space I've got. So we've got the blind. You can see that the metal channel of the blind has got these little plastic end caps. I'll keep those in for now, but we will take them out soon. And I've got the rotary handle. This is the top trim that gets stuck on using the double-sided 3M tape Velcro blocks. And we've got the brackets. So if it's a really big blind, you definitely will need that middle one as well. If it's not too wide, you can probably get away with just using the end brackets. Now you see you've got numerous holes in these, so we've got lots of choices as to how that will fix up, and we'll look at those in a minute. So the dimensions of the blind, if I just run a tape measure from one end to the other, now it's out of the packet. So this is stated as being 120 centimeter blind, and you can see that it is pretty much 1 millimeter under 120 centimeters exactly. So I need to make sure that my blind is going to fit in on the space that I measured, which was my 116.5. Now a really good advice here is always to check your measurements twice. So I'm going to go back over to the window. I'm now going to check that size at the bottom. 1165. And I'm also going to check it at the top, because this bathroom has been tiled, and there's no guarantee it will be square and accurate, but nope, that is. So I'm definitely 116.5 centimeters. So I've got to make sure that I trim off the right amount off of this blind without taking too much off and without leaving too much of a gap. Now I have to account for it whilst these brackets are on. So I'm going to put that end bracket on there and that end bracket on there, and I'm going to measure that again. So let me just check that measurement. Okay, so I've come out to the workbench, and I've made a couple of wooden blocks. Now these wooden blocks, they're basically little arches, and the idea of these is that I'll just come around to the other side of the blind. I'm going to bridge over this rotary metal shaft there. So I'm bridging over that. Okay, and I'm going to put one of those there, and I've made another one, and that's going to go there. And the next thing I'm going to need to do is to get this whole blind clamped up. So I need to have two of these adjustable clamps. Obviously it depends how thick your blind is to how big the clamp needs to be. You might find that you can get away with, you know, a smaller G-clamp style, but I'm going to use these quick release G-clamps. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get those clamped up, and then I'll show you the marking out step. So before I do the clamp, I'm just going to remove this little piece of trim from the bottom part of the blind. I need to remove that from both ends. So there's one on that end and there's one on that end, so that now when I clamp this up, I'm going to have a piece of scrap wood. And can you see my piece of scrap wood I've cut so that it fits in between those two little plastic trims at the bottom? So we're going to squeeze across here, and I'm going to make sure that it's all lining up square, because I'm going to use a tri-square on the end to make sure it sits just right. So the next step is to make sure that your blind is all sitting flush and level. So we've got the wooden block sitting on the top, and a piece of scrap wood that fits in the bottom. I'm going to use a tri-square to make sure that the end is sitting level. And I'm going to put my quick release clamp in position. So I squeeze it up with a bit of hand pressure, and then wind the handle. Now before I tighten that up too much, I'm going to be checking that it's sitting square. Okay, so if it needs a slight adjustment, I'm just going to take the pressure off. Now perhaps use a piece of scrap wood just to check it's level, and then check it again with the tri-square. That's looking really good. And apply tension using the quick release clamp. So it's all being tightly squeezed together, as close as I can to where I want to cut. But obviously I've got the mechanism running through there, so I can't squeeze on top of the mechanism. So I'm going to go to the other end, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other end. So now I'm going to do the same on the other end. A piece of scrap wood. I've got my U-shaped bridge block, just going to sit in there. Quick release clamp. Squeeze it together. Make sure it's all sitting level. Apply some pressure. And then we're ready to mark out the cut. So I need to remove about 22mm off of each end. So I'm going to take my tri-square, and that's how I'm going to mark out my 22mm cut. So I'm going to use a tri-square, a pencil, and a steel rule. So I'm going to use I'm going to mark out my 22mm, put a mark, run that mark across. This one won't reach, but the saw is going to mark that out. I'm going to do the same on both ends, and the next step is to set that up using my chop saw. So I've set up my circular saw. I've got a piece of scrap wood at the back of the saw, so that the end of the G-clamp doesn't interfere. I've made sure that my depth of cut, my cut is just on the waist side of the line, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from the bottom of the blind towards the top and cut back through. So I'm making sure that I've got goggles on to protect my eyes, and I've got some ear defenders in because sometimes it can get quite loud. So let's go ahead and make the cut. Okay, so the left side cut is done, and now let's set up for the right cut. Okay, so now we're set up to do the right hand cut. So I'm cutting on the waist side of the line. Bring the saw back, make sure the strings are well out of the way. Okay then, eye protection on. So we've got a neat cut. You always get that little bang as it cuts through the final part of the metal part. You'll notice that I'm using a very fine tooth on my circular saw. The more teeth, the better the finish. I wouldn't attempt this with a saw blade which has got very few teeth. You need one which has got lots of teeth per inch. Right, next thing is we've got to go and attach the brackets to the wall. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is to check that the blind will actually fit the space. So let's just offer that up. I've got about 8 to 10 millimeters of overall gap, so it'll be about 4 millimeters each side. And that should be fine. Now the next thing we need to look at is the brackets. So let's go and decide how we're going to attach the brackets to the wall. So the manufacturers have given us lots of different possible drill holes. We're looking at the small holes in the brackets, not the big ones. So when I offer up the bracket up to the corner up here, so this is the left hand side one, I can see that I could potentially drill through the tile and into the wall behind. I'd have to insert a raw plug, or I'm going to go for the easy option, which is I'm going to attach these directly to the wooden window frame. So the easiest thing for me to do is to mark out those 4 positions that go through the bracket into the wood and to drill a pilot hole. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hold the bracket in position and then use a pencil. I'm going to mark those 4 positions, even though I'm probably only going to drill 2 of them. So I want you to understand what size drill to put in. So I'm putting in here a drill bit which is smaller than the screw. It's really important that you understand the difference between a clearance hole and a pilot hole. So I'm going to be putting in a pilot hole, so that's, imagine the centre of the drill, the centre of the screw minus its teeth. Some people make a mistake of putting in too large a hole. So Okay, so I'm going to drill. I've drilled just 2 of those, and I'm going to put in 2 small screws. These are 25mm screws, and I'm going to put those in using an impact driver. First one's in. Okay, second one's in. And now I'm going to repeat the process on the other side exactly the same way. So I'm going to hold up the bracket, mark out my hole positions. I'm marking 4, even though I'm probably only doing 2. Pilot drill. And then screw the bracket in place. So these are PZ2 screws, so I'm making sure I use a PZ2 bit. PZ means posi. It's similar to a Phillips, but it's got an extra little cross on the end. Okay, so the next job is going to involve checking to see if the blind fits and then adjusting the length. Okay, so my blind brackets are in. I could put an additional one in the centre. Now I know that this blind is not going to be raised and lowered very much. I'm not worried about the support for that. So let's offer the blind up. So first of all, I'm going to need to remove the G-clamps. Oops. So I'm going to remove those clamps that we put on there. So this is a quick release G-clamp. I need a cameraman because I'm trying to do DIY one-handed. Not easy. So let's get those G-clamps off and then we'll offer up the blind to the brackets. So we're going to offer up the blind to the brackets. I've made sure that the little gates on the brackets are open. So I need to make sure I've removed all of those wooden blocks that I put in. The blind is definitely facing the right way. The adjuster is facing outwards. I'm going to put in one side and then the other. Now I need to close those little brackets and they should click shut. So the blind is now up and in position, but I need to adjust it. So first of all, I can't lower the blind. So the manufacturers have been very safety conscious and they've put these plastic little plastic stoppers on there, and that prevents the blind from being undone. Maybe it makes it safer during transit, or maybe it's to prevent it getting tangled, but the first thing I need to do is to read the warning. Children can strangle if this safety device is not installed and adjusted. Read carefully the instructions and install accordingly. So whenever I do blinds, I'll always make sure that the strings are as short as they can be. So at the moment, these strings are longer than they need to be because the blind is currently capable of going further down than I need it to. So I'm going to undo these safety devices, lower the blind fully down, and I'm going to then remove the unwanted parts. So this particular blind has got a plastic handle on the end of the string. So we've got 4 strings which correlate to the 4 mechanism points, and then they go into this handle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that out. I'm going to currently remove that and then reinstall that in a minute. So now I'm free to remove these safety mechanisms. Okay, so I'm undoing all of the knots and taking off those small plastic safety clips. Okay, so it's really important that your blind strings are cut and as short as they can be safely, but I can understand why the manufacturers have done it. There must have been cases in the past of children getting tangled in blinds and then getting into difficulty or worse, and that's why they protect themselves by putting these devices on. But I'm going to uninstall them, and then at the end you can reinstall your safety devices for the string management. Okay, so that's one more to go. Okay, now all of my string safety mechanisms are off. You can probably do that quicker by cutting the plastic off with some side cutters, but I don't need to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my blind to its maximum limit. Okay, so the string is still up there, but I've got these 4 short strings at the moment. Now I've got more blind here than I need. I can start to remove the unwanted blinds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bottom of the blind, supporting those on the windowsill, and I'm going to need to remove, I'm going to untie or snip off the knot on those. So I'm just going to get some scissors. So the final steps of the project are to stick the double-sided taped Velcro blocks onto the actual blind. I wouldn't stick them on the trim, I'd put them onto the blind, and then with the trim cut to length, hold the trim up and then push it firmly in place. Okay, last part of the job is to attach the pole, which allows you to adjust the blind. So that simply hooks on. Let's check that works. That's good. That's good. So these particular blinds that I've used are fully plastic. Now they're great for bathrooms. They look a bit cheap compared to nice wooden blinds, but I think in a bathroom environment they're absolutely perfect. So we've got it, it goes up, it goes down, it closes, no problem. That should be trouble free. So remember the safety concerns of the string. I've done it so the string is really short when it's in the down position, and just bear in mind that I'm a keen DIYer, so this channel is called Dad Stuff. It's where I explain how I do things. I'm not a professional blind installer, but I've done a lot of DIY and solve a lot of problems around the home. So hopefully that's of some use to you. It should be much cheaper to buy blinds and then cut them to the size that you prefer, rather than have a company make made to measure blinds and have people install them for you. And I think it looks way better to have the blind set within the window reveal rather than to have the blind overlaying, which is not such a useful option, because if you have your blind over the window reveal, then you haven't got access to the shelf, so you can't put your things on the shelf in the same way because you've blocked your shelf out of reach. So I really hope that helps. Next week I'm going to do a video which is all about how to fit the IKEA blinds, which have got the spring mechanism. So if you're interested, check back and I'll explain how to fit the IKEA blinds. Okay, so the final two stages I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the top piece of trim. That needs to have the double-sided blocks put on. So you'll see that these are 3M backed Velcro blocks and they've got a bit of a spacer to them. So we're going to get those attached. I'm not going to go right on the end onto the brackets, but I'm going to put them, I've got 5, so I'm going to do 5 equally spaced, but I'm coming in from about 5 or 6 centimeters from the end. So the final steps of the project are to stick the double-sided taped Velcro blocks onto the actual blind. I wouldn't stick them on the trim, I'd put them onto the blind, and then with the trim cut to length, hold the trim up and then push it firmly in place. Okay, last part of the job is to attach the pole, which allows you to adjust the blind. So that simply hooks on. Let's check that works. That's good. That's good. So these particular blinds that I've used are fully plastic. Now they're great for bathrooms. They look a bit cheap compared to nice wooden blinds, but I think in a bathroom environment they're absolutely perfect. So we've got it so it goes up, it goes down, it closes, no problem. That should be trouble free. So remember the safety concerns of the string. I've done it so the string is really short and it's in the down position, and just bear in mind that I'm a keen DIYer, so this channel is called Dad Stuff. It's where I explain how I do things. I'm not a professional blind installer, but I've done a lot of DIY and solve a lot of problems around the home. So hopefully that's of some use to you. It should be much cheaper to buy blinds and then cut them to the size that you prefer, rather than have a company made to measure blinds and have people install them for you. And I think it looks way better to have the blind set within the window reveal rather than to have the blind overlaying, which is not such a useful option, because if you have your blind over the window reveal, then you haven't got access to the shelf, so you can't put your things on the shelf in the same way because you've blocked your shelf out of reach. So I really hope that helps. Next week I'm going to do a video which is all about how to fit the IKEA blinds, which have got the spring mechanism. So if you're interested, check back and I'll explain how to fit the IKEA blinds.